I didn't know, and so because we hadn't had it.
We are, but today's discussion was yes, absolutely. You're going to have to jump on your desk. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's our youngest son's birthday. It's William's birthday.
Our youngest son.
This is Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. I'm Allison Clarkson and the chair of the committee, and we today are going to continue our introductions of each other, even though we've shifted places 5 days a week. So
Mom always likes to be by.
So our Chittenden Southeast senators were not able to be with us on Friday when we began our introductions, and so we would love to. We have that opportunity, and the people who are with us, and Heidi. And today we have new people joining us. So, Tom and Keisha, we would love to just give us a notion of why you're on this committee, who you are, what brought you to this work, and then my hope is that we're going to have some time to think about what our priorities are and share them, not just for the moment, but share our priorities a little later in the week so that we can be clear, hopefully before Thursday. So maybe for the day morning, bright and early.
Sure. So I guess I'll just say a few things for mostly the people at home. I think we all are returning senators, so I think we know each other pretty well. But I'm Tom Chittenden for the last 2 terms. This is my 3rd term. I served on transportation in the morning, and then in the afternoon I actually switched. I started in education and then finance last session. So this session I was just really excited to continue on finance. So that was my primary ask. And for the morning committee, I was happy to go anywhere. So I love this topic area. We need to spur more economic growth in Vermont. I completely concur with Senator Weeks on that. And why I'm here, why I ran for this office, it's been the same since the beginning, which is I just want to make it easier to build houses in this state. I want to see more homes and more Vermonters be able to afford to live here, to stay here, live here, work here, and thrive here. So I think this committee's jurisdictional component is exactly where I've been inspired to serve in the State House. And so I'm happy to be here. Does that do it?
That's great, but you actually haven't mentioned one of the key reasons that you're going to be great on this committee is what you do professionally.
So where I was last week, again, for those at home, is I work primarily, my full-time job is at the University of Vermont. I'm a lecturer up there. And last week was this event that I've been the co-chair of for 12 years. It's called the Schlesinger Global Family Enterprise Case Competition. It's just a large part of my work responsibility. We spent the whole year planning it and executing it. I really oversee, it's a student-run competition, but we just have high standards. And so it's hard for me to extract myself from that event. It was an incredibly successful event. We had teams from all over the world here in Burlington, Vermont for about 5 to 6 days. Really important for my role at the university to just execute it. I don't like missing a week of the legislature, but I have had to miss the last 3 years. It's always the week before the semester begins. So that's where I was last week. And next year, I'll probably miss the first week again, just because it's such a critical portion of what I do at the university, and we spend all year planning it. But I'd love to invite you all as judges, but you're all busy down here. So if it was at a different time, I'd look to incorporate all of you.
No, it sounds great. And you teach how many courses at the business school?
So I'm a lecturer, so I don't have a PhD, no research responsibilities. That's unlike Senator Baruth. But for those of you that have been around for a while, and I know Allison Clarkson knows my mentor and good friend, Ann Pugh, I have a very similar role to Ann Pugh. We're both lecturers. So my workload is about 8 courses a year, but I get course releases for things like that Schlesinger Global Family Enterprise Case Competition. So my work there counts as a course. I teach between as low as 4, because I've also had other roles, like I was the faculty senate president for 2 years, and that came with 2 course releases. But I also I teach as few as 4 courses a year, as many as 6 or 7, depending on the needs. This year I'm doing 5 courses, as well as other things that count towards courses.
Great. Terrific. Well, it's great to have you on this committee, and a great opportunity to get to know you better. We haven't worked together, don't we? And Keisha, former chair of this committee, welcome back.
You said it, not me. So Senator Keisha Rum Hinsdale, also from Chittenden Southeast. And I can solve the problem of having you all as judges or some kind of arbitrators for students in this program, because Senator Chittenden encouraged me to consider teaching in the program, leaving Vermont Law and Graduate School, which I've enjoyed doing outside of the legislature, but I need to be closer to home with 2 kids under 2, who may make an appearance here once in a while. And so I'm starting by teaching a summer course on law and business. And am hoping that my syllabus includes the final day being in the State House and presenting a policy idea related to the economy and having legislators give them feedback. So aside from that, I was chair of this committee. I have always asked to be here and to lead on this policy area, having grown up in my father's family business, who was an immigrant to the country, and my mother was involved in the business, who just moved to Vermont, one of the first women to get an MBA at UCLA, as well as the loan from their business came from the Women's Bank of Los Angeles. So not forgetting access to capital and how critical it is to our democracy that we have small business and that they're functional. I'm avoiding the topic that I could talk about forever and ever, and I'm actually giving the keynote to the home builders this evening in the New North End of Burlington. But I don't think we will solve a single other problem in this building until we tackle our housing crisis. You can say goodbye to your climate goals, your healthcare goals, your education goals. Really, anything else that people want to achieve will not happen unless we build more housing. When I was chair, it was something like 24,000 open jobs and 1,000 housing listings. We are building, we are seeing the success of our work, but we need to keep plowing ahead to meet our goals and to have a functioning economy.
Right.
And I have about 60 things on my list because I have been building, an agenda, but the chair has those. I'm happy to share those with anyone.
Right. And we can certainly begin discussing those today. Clearly, housing is one of our primary responsibilities in this committee: Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. And General Affairs, no one has talked about liquor and lottery being their agenda item for the year. But former chairs have actually had it as a top agenda item, sports betting, and now we have sports betting with all its challenges, actually. So today we don't have much time. We got appointed fairly late. Heidi has done heroic work trying to fill this. It's actually just trying to fill today with people because we have lots of people to hear from. We have lots of reports. We're also working to collect all the reports due to this committee and getting them up on the website. And I think, Heidi, do you have an update for us on that? Are we getting them all up on the website? Because everybody needs to be taking a peek.
On the reports,
Yes,
we will be, but they're not there.
you've got them all. However,
I have a few, yes.
you have the list. Right, you have the list, and we can find the list on reports and research on the reports piece in the on the legislative website. But it's a little awkward to have to go through each one and see which, where it was supposed to go.
Well, I think one of the concerns I have are some of our most anticipated reports will be missing in the month of January. There are groups that have already asked for extensions and delays, including designated areas, which is unfinished business from last year. So I think even importantly, which is above Heidi's pay grade, is the ones we're missing and how we work on them regardless of the report.
I think we're going to be asking for updates, even if they're not finished. So
Yeah.
where are they?
Right.
The other, we'll be hearing about some of the ones that are due to us and some that have been done independent of us, like public assets. If you have anything you want to make sure that we hear from that's important new work, that please let us know and we'll discuss it. The one of the things I just want to talk about right now is how we work together and what our schedule is going to be. We have, and I've asked House Commerce, I've already met with a bunch of my counterparts in the House to clarify our jurisdictional lanes, because in many we share jurisdictions, as we went through in the last 2 years with housing. But one of the things I want to work with is figuring out, we have such a short time together to accomplish so much. And I would love to start at 8:30 Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I know that's a challenge for Randy.
I wasn't even that mean as the chair.
But
Huh?
we did start at 8:30.
Only toward the end of toward crossover and toward the end of the session.
Okay, so I would love it if we could begin in February, maybe, but I would rather begin, if we can, beginning at 8:30, beginning next week. This week, we're beginning at 9, I think, with some exceptions. I know Keisha may have some challenges with that. Randy has a long commute every day. I stay here, so,
Thursdays, we have Elcar 8 to 9.
oh, so you're on Elcott, I think. Got it.
Just wanted to speak on.
Okay.
I try to be in the building by 7 or 7:30, so it's fine with me, but whatever works for everybody.
I think the issue is it's not a question of who's in the building. Most of us are in the building at 8, but there's a lot of 8 to 9 meetings since it's the only time besides lunch that
Well, yeah, but a lot of the committees, almost all the committees start at 8:30. Almost everybody is starting at 8:30 now. So I'm happy to do 9 o'clock for the first month, maybe. And-
Go ahead. If the guardian committee wants to start at 8:30, we'll start at 8:30 then.
So let's see how it rolls. And let's do January, we'll start at 9. On Tuesday after the floor. And then maybe in February, let's start at 8:30, because then we'll be clearer on our tasks. We'll be
I'll just say I ran into quorum issues even at 9 a.m. last biennium, because if you have the majority leader and, people traveling on your committee, you often have quorum issues first thing.
I didn't notice that we had those challenges, but hey, we're
Quorum. Yeah, but Randy would get here on time when he was asked, and I wouldn't have a quorum. So I just want to name that.
well, one of the things I would ask is that we all be as timely as possible. And if you aren't going to be timely, to let us know, because then we can if we aren't going to have a quorum, we can let people know and give them time. I would love to discuss our priorities, and because I know each one of us has them, but I'd also love to give you time to think about them. Keisha and I and Randy, who've served on this committee for a long time, this is my 9th year on this committee. I'm pretty clear on the jurisdictional range of this committee. But one thing our title doesn't talk about is consumer protection and labor. And those are also 2 big elements of our committee work that are not included in this, and where we have some top priorities.
I think consumer protection is written into our
Not in our title, though.
Oh, not our title, but
I'm just talking about economic development,
Okay.
housing, and general affairs. General affairs includes everything from labor, consumer protection, liquor and lottery, military affairs, other than that's a jurisdictional lane issue with GovOps. So we share jurisdictions with the Natural Resources Committee and with GovOps. And those are the 2 big ones that we can sometimes. And so workforce development, again, also labor, but those are all sort of lumped into our general affairs. I am happy to chat now about if people do have their priorities clear in their heads. And if we want to continue the conversation on priorities, happy to continue it Thursday. I think we have time Thursday, but
we have the agenda.
we do. We're going to have, we'll send everybody the agenda as it is right now, so people can see where we are.
I printed them out because I didn't know if folks.
Oh, great. That would be great for people to take a peek.
You and I hadn't had a chance to talk
We've
about.
worked hard trying to deal with the house.
There's also-
We're also wanting to do all the things people agree to.
All right, and it is up on the committee webpage as of like 10 this morning.
Great. Thank you so much.
Perhaps the first priority would be to not do what we did last year
Which was,
with regarding the subject matter. We operated timely in terms of dealing with the housing issue, creating a housing bill that had tripartisan support and the support of the governor. And we sent it to the other committee with which we had jurisdiction, who sat on it and did nothing with it for months. And as a result, we wound up with a bill that nobody had completely read, even on the last day of the session, because it was constantly changing and not well organized. That was one. And one's enough.
yeah, no, it's true. We also this year with the new creation of technology and institutions, that it is we need to work on our jurisdictional issues there, because data privacy has been a consumer protection issue, and the kids code very much a consumer protection issue. they don't have jurisdiction on consumer protection. So we're meeting today to chat about that. And I'm organizing a meeting with the other chairs of natural resources and in the House and the Senate so that we can and Mark Mahaly, so that we can all be clear on our jurisdictional lanes as we go continue our work on
Very
that.
important, the negotiations that you have, leadership, that we talk about timing and terms of
Absolutely.
like where bills go and what committees, when they have to get done with them and when they have to be complete.
Yes, actually, we were pretty clear on the timeline, and you're right. We did hit some kerfluffles.
I'm gonna ask
Yeah.
a new person question. What are kind of mini counterpunts in the House? So we got economic development and then general, what are the other, is there two
With
other?
Commerce and insurance. What's their full name? House Commerce and
Economic development.
Economic Development. And they also oversee insurance. So with you on finance, you would want to partner with Marcotte and find out who their insurance point person
I
is.
will say that just as a returning legislator, I'm hoping the policy committees of jurisdiction look at their areas of insurance because having served on finance, there's a bottleneck there in terms of they're not doing a review of most types of insurance. And I was talking to Jamie Fian outside of session, and property and casualty insurance is going through the roof.
Yeah.
We deal with it often as an emergency, but I think it would be good if P&C was something we had jurisdictional understanding of in this committee. So that if we are going to act on something like homeowners insurance, flood insurance, business casualty
have.
insurance.
And we did last year. I mean, particularly as we're addressing resiliency and flood recovery, this is a big piece of.
Right.
We
So
accept
insurance would be, I think, a good topic, especially property and casualty for us to take on in a proactive way.
Okay, well, we should chat about that. Maybe we can all have that. But to answer your question, housing is done in the House by House Gen. And so Mark Mahaly is the new chair of that committee. And
Ashley Barkley.
Ashley is the vice chair. And the wages and are back with House Commerce. Liquor and lottery are also House General.
No, it's government operations.
Oh, right now it's
So
government
that's a
operations.
third of four.
Right,
It would be
yes.
nice to have a chart, wouldn't it?
It would be, but I think we're now pretty clear, but yes, we could certainly put together a chart. Because
Well,
in the House,
this ought to be something that is a Senate-wide, not on individual Senate committees, completing a chair of what somebody else in another body is doing, because that somebody else in the other body also may have concurrent jurisdiction with other Senate committees. So it strikes me that this is a Senate-House issue from the top.
we actually have descriptions. We have descriptions of each, and I will get them from Bloomer and Betsy Ann. Because we have descriptions of the jurisdiction of each one. I'll get right to each of them.
And House Government Operations changed their name last biennium to Government Operations Liquor and Lottery or something.
Yeah,
So they-
and they now do military. They now
Yeah,
take
they're
over.
Government Operations and Military.
They've taken over the military, which House General had also, and they've taken over liquor and lottery, which House General had.
Yeah.
They haven't taken over burial issues, which is still with House General. And actually with, well, I'm never quite sure. Sometimes it's with us and sometimes it's. But that's a good question, Tom. And it's actually one of the things that Ledge Council has asked us to avoid as much as possible, doing omnibus bills, because the challenge with an omnibus bill is once it may only have 2 committees of jurisdiction in the Senate, but once it gets to the House, there are many. And so when you talk about timing,
Mhm.
the travel time for a bill, if it's too big, often means that it has timing challenges. Anything you want to add on
I
that?
would add, though, just one thing.
Yeah.
Is that in terms of the organization at the beginning of the bill, when you know it's an omnibus bill, and housing generally is going to be an omnibus bill at one time or another, is to coordinate with the House as to the path that it takes, because there's no reason that it has to go sequentially.
Right.
That's one of the things that's causing all the issues now
I agree.
that we had last year.
Right.
So
They're done concurrently.
So as Keisha did, for the last biennium, I have already begun to coordinate with my House counterparts and my Senate partners, our jurisdictional partners, to figure out who's gonna go first on what issues and on what bills. So we're working on it.
I mean, as a data point of one, you know, a senator who cares a lot about these issues, I hope, you know, particularly our counterparts from the other party can appreciate that we cannot be caught flat-footed on some of these issues if we're waiting for the other body. So I chose not to wait for something from the House, and I think that was wise in the sense that we never got a housing bill from the House, frankly. And I worry that that is some of what happened on the property tax and education finance question. Is if you were on finance, we got their bill with 3 weeks to clear. So I would add that I just think for all of our sakes as people who have been sent here by those who are hoping we act with some urgency, I don't think there's a lot of issues we can afford to wait on that are of overall importance to our constituents, and I would count housing among those.
Oh, housing very much at the top. Workforce development for me. I mean, they're a number. Yeah, I completely agree. And we need to move. Yeah, I agree. So, any other just sort of questions about this committee? So,
Can I add
yeah,
that I would say unless something changes with how we operate, we did explicitly say last year that tier 1 of the Act 250 maps that we're developing are squarely economic development maps. Tier 3 is being developed as a protected natural resource area or ecological area. Tier 2 was never fully defined. I think we need to redefine and have a conversation about that. But I just have spent most of last biennium trying to argue, I think somewhat successfully, that where permits stop any economic activity from happening, that is our concern in our jurisdiction as well. So I told others that I think while we have the Act 250 mapping process going and we check in on it, we should also be looking at other permits that are stopping development from where we said it should occur, like A&R permits.
right. All right. And one of the people we'll be hearing from the RPCs and see how the mapping process has started and see what kind of launch it's been given. Because I think all of us are, Charlie Baker sat in that chair and we quizzed him on whether or not he could actually accomplish doing all the mapping that we're expecting in the 2 years that he had. He assured us that it was possible, and so we're gonna have to check in with him bright and early.
Can I ask another timing question? And I'm just not good at beating around the bush. So I think most people know that. I would want our chair to have taken a pulse of the committee by the end of the week about even putting on the agenda a data privacy bill that has a private right of action in it. I personally, as former chair, think it would be a lot of poorly spent time, because we would inflame a lot of people in this building who would have every right to be heard if we took up a data privacy bill with a private right of action in it. So I would advocate that if we want a data privacy bill, we want a kids code, we want to tackle the question of not selling children's data and youth mental health and social media, that the private right of action would drag that whole bill down. So I hope by the end of the week, after we've heard from the Attorney General and others, we can decide as a committee if we would even spend time on that, because it will suck away a lot of our time and make us have to come at 8:30 when otherwise I don't think we would have to.
Thank you, and I appreciate that that's your feeling. And we have disagreed on that, which is fine. I am not yet clear with our new committee whose jurisdiction that bill will actually end up with. Obviously, I think we will have the pieces that are consumer protection pieces. So that, and there's a lot of it that is.
If businesses are being sued, it should also be our jurisdiction. I think the problem with last year's bill is that it was every data topic. It was a consumer protection bill, a health data bill, a medical bill,
It was a big bill.
it was social media, et cetera. It was biometric data. Those are separate bills, but anything that has a private right of action that would implicate businesses engaged in consumer
Absolutely,
external
we would
consumer
be,
affairs, we should take up.
absolutely.
And I just asked the committee to join me in thinking about what's the best use of our time.
Correct. I would agree.
Likewise.
Yeah, no, I know how you two feel. Having gone through it all with you last year. It's very clear. And anyone is welcome to go and look at the YouTube discussions because we had some very robust discussions.
Healthy though.
Right.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so if anyone would like to chat about what some of their priorities are, I'm happy to do that, but I'm also happy to wait till Thursday because I think we have time Thursday because I didn't want to sort of surprise anybody with that conversation. And we have been this particular first week as we all boot up on all the reports and all the partners that we deal with in the administration and out in the world. We're all asking the same people, all our different committees. So unfortunately, a lot of people were not available. And as much as possible, Heidi is negotiating with the House to have the same people in the morning and then they can have them in the afternoon. But as much as possible to be thoughtful about how squeezed we are for time and that we're only in the morning so that we get them in the morning as opposed to, anyway, I'm hoping that we can have our priority discussion on Thursday morning at 9. We'll have the Department of Labor begin at 9:30. But if people feel ready to go, we have 15 minutes to chat. So I'm happy to just begin that discussion now. Go for it.
So I am ready to talk about it, but I will pause till Thursday. I do recommend that the 3 senior senators with economic development experience essentially go first with your goals, because I think you'll provide some insights to Senator Chittenden and I. That would be helpful so we don't, repeat the obvious.
Well, I mean, I think we probably all have very similar priorities in some ways, but I think you have a particular one that I think would love. We haven't heard the voice of Rutland for
That's
So
2 years.
Thursday would be good, but again, I'd really like to hear, based on experience, because to your point, limited time. You need to focus. I don't want to just, scatterbomb the whole.
I'd echo that. I'd love to hear from your thoughts from the carryover work from the
Right.
previous session, what our priorities are, and we can fill in the gaps with what we've been hearing from our constituents on the
Right.
campaign trail.
I'm realizing we've ended up with 2 of just the nicest, least ego-driven people in the building on our, and you're gonna have to speak at some point.
Well,
Don't
I hear you.
But of course, it'll be changed after years.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're gonna have to speak up for yourself.
Randy, as vice chair, would you like to begin? We have 15 minutes because it would be great if you'd like to start.
I'll
And then
begin.
Keisha and I can go, we can all, the rest of us go first.
In a way, what I put as goals may not be goals of subject matter areas that we're going to deal with, because I think we all know what some of those subject areas are.
Yeah.
But the things that I'm most concerned about in any bill that we deal with is 1, cost.
Yeah.
And return on investment.
Mhm. Would you say cost of living in that,
I
or,
would say cost and return on investment.
right? Mhm.
What it cost, what the actual activity costs.
What does it cost to do what it is we propose to do?
Mhm.
And is there a return on investment for doing it?
Mhm.
That
Cost to
return
the
on
state
investment-
or cost to the business, cost to the individual, all costs? Like,
All
I just
costs.
want to make sure I'm on
All-
the same page.
all
with you.
costs.
Yeah.
All costs. But in particular, for our purposes, since
Mhm.
we have control over implementation cost
Mhm.
and what the return on investment for doing what it is that we might propose be done. And that
Yeah.
return on investment could be monetary. It also could be in other measures, for
Mhm.
example. So cost is one thing that's at the top of my list right now. Time is the second thing on cost. I'm very concerned about proposing items that take forever to do and have unknown cost implications
Mhm.
for the future.
Yeah. What, can you give people an example of one?
Example of time is, why does it take so long to build a house?
Mhm.
And what are the things that are preventing that time from rapidly moving past us? We have great programs, but if they go through 100 people and 100 agencies to have to approve them and study them all in a sequential fashion, that's time.
Mhm.
And that's why it takes 3 years in South Burlington to build an apartment. Some of the testimony we heard last year. So time is the second thing. So we've got cost, we've got time.
Return on investment.
Personnel,
Time and
maybe.
return on investment. That's all it's all
Yeah.
part of one thing. And then perhaps another word is clarity. And what we do, and part of clarity is combined with accountability. We shouldn't do anything unless we have a means to measure whether or not it's doing what it is that we hope to achieve, and doing so in a manner that we can measure. Some measurement I know is subjective, but at least it's a measurement that's designed to be put on top of a framework as to that we looked at in advance by saying how we're going to know if what we passed is what it is we intended to achieve. And not the kind of thing that we did in some cases on housing that we're going to measure whether or not it was achieved in 8 years or 7 years.
Some
Because
things,
at
in
that-
all fairness, do take time.
Some
Just
things
for
take
that.
time, but there need to be at least intermediate benchmarks that give us an indication as to whether or not what we did made any sense.
Mhm.
But right now, we pass things that cost $1 billion, take forever to do, and then we don't even go back and look at it in any logical way or as part of an agenda of accountability.
Right.
And really, for these major things that we do need to have accountability. And unfortunately, so often we don't. So those are the three things that really are on the front of my mind, regardless of what are the specifics we do regarding, housing and liquor and lottery and all the various pieces that we do. Now, if you want to ask what's the first on the list, right now, the first on my list is housing. And the first on my list is housing because that we can see the house is on fire. You've got a forest fire.
Is there a particular aspect of housing that you're particularly wanting us to focus on?
Appeals.
Appeal may be one of them, but it is
But that's
also
I mean,
it is also the entire process. I look at the housing process as almost too, I won't say decentralized. Decentralized is not the right word. It's fragmented, even when it's under the roof of a single agency, in that you've got to go and you got to get this permit and that permit and this permit and that permit. Either one is overseen by a particular group or agency or department or cubicle. And a builder has to go and do all of these things, but I don't get the sense there's any coordination between any of it. They're all sequential activities done by individual groups or agencies. And they have a tremendous possibility of breaking down in delivery. Because you go through all of the 12 permits you're supposed to get to do this. And when you get to the 12th permit, you get the person who is at the agency level, according to the builder, is slow, deliberate, non-communicative, and all of the things that prevent things from happening without clear understanding. And there doesn't seem to be anybody over that makes things happen. Or conversely, you get to the 12th permit that you need, and that person's on vacation and isn't coming back for 2 weeks, and everything stops.
So,
And so when you start measuring how long does it take to get a permit to build a housing unit, you have all of these points of delay and dysfunction that nobody seems to be in charge of. And that concerns me a lot.
and that goes into your time concern.
It goes directly into the time concern. And then also part of that time concern, and it's an accountability concern also, is certainty. Because that's the thing that also is missing about housing. A developer can start to build a project that will take, however long it is to do it. But through a huge investment has to be made in the permitting process without any clarity as to whether or not, if I do all these things and make all this investment, will my project be approved? Because the subjectivity of the process is there that it can, in fact, derail it. And that is one of the things I believe, and I've certainly had testimony, that discourages people from building. Because they say, I go to New Hampshire and the rules are clear. It says, if I do this, and this, that I can check off, my project will be approved and I could build this. In Vermont, I could do all of those things, but somebody doesn't like the color of my building or the shape of it or its effect on the trees in the next county. I can't build it. There's a lack of certainty.
Well, I think that ties into, I think one of our priorities that will emerge, is addressing the appeals process. And I think that is something we can actually
We can make progress on that, I think.
I think we can make
But
significant progress on it
I'm not
because
sure that it is entirely appeals. I think it is also the approval process also.
well, I think
Clarity.
absolutely, and I think supporting our planning process because we have very robust planning process in the state, and I think we can also review that, look at that, and say because there are some proposals out there that are looking at if it is actually made it through the municipal planning and the regional planning, then everything should be able to be greenlit and no appeals beyond that. So once it's gone through a very robust, and that would be certainty, that is a proposal that I know we're going to be hearing about, which would be, for me, I think quite interesting to hear. If you've gone through that whole process and public hearings and input, an opportunity for appeal right through the regional planning commission. And once they sign off, that project is greenlit and ready to go.
But I think
No
also
appeals
it
beyond
would
that.
be worth at least hearing, and if there is anyone that we should hear from, to say this whole process, the local, regional, and so on and so forth, is there a way to even simplify that?
Well,
And cover the same
coordinate
ground in a coordinated fashion. And I hate the word coordinated.
Well,
Every time we have it,
I like
it means another job with the title coordinator in the job title. And whenever you do that, it means right by definition, the project is uncoordinated to begin with.
That's not true. That's not always true. That's not fair.
Show
I
me one.
think, I think what you're also asking for is coordination. So you can't have a seamless time frame and have certainty if you don't also coordinate it all. So
That's right. It has to be well organized and well
organized.
That's correct.
I like, well,
But as simple as possible without the complexity that we tend to build in things as we do. As to ask ourselves, is it necessary to have the complexity that we have? Are there ways in which we can define things and better so that they are either yes or no, as opposed to having to have individual reviews with a high degree of complexity of almost every aspect of every project.
Really glad to hear this because I completely agree. We need to tackle the appeals process. It's keeping investment at bay, and when there's uncertainty around what could stall out and prevent a very important critical housing project from going forward. So I'm glad to hear this.
yeah, no, I think we have addressed it. And we have, I think, improved appeals as we have gone through in the last 2 years. So, so we have a little bit of time. Keisha, do you want to just get started? Because you have a long list of things, or do you want to wait till Thursday?
I'm not going to get into my long list. I appreciate Senator Brock taking us to the very high level, and I think I can meet him where he's at with some pretty broad strokes. And I would start by saying something I've been saying to the governor's office, which is, I know none of us want to claim victory on housing because we tweaked some laws. We want to claim victory on housing because new units are being built, that are walkable and vibrant and help take care of people who are displaced from natural disasters, who are living in a single family home that they can no longer maintain or take care of, and they like to be in community housing that's rich in services and supports. And I think that is broad enough that we should have, a new housing bill that we look at. And I in terms of accountability, I have been pulled into conversations about individual projects all over the state. Perhaps some of you have as well. And because we're living, breathing people and we're not like the ghost of Act 250, people have been asking, well, what did you mean by this? We will have to deal with some of our intent questions as a body because no single legislator should be trying to express the intent of what we meant. For example, housing projects where they have a sewer line, they are on the road with water, and there is an appeal based on they are not along water and sewer. I don't think that's what we meant. And I am being asked to clarify. And often what I say is wherever you can build a single family home, we want multifamily housing to be allowed as well and not criminalized. So we do need to look at where the bill has got, where our past legislation has gotten bottlenecked again and clean up our intent in some of those areas. Two, I would be encouraging every committee to do this, but we know we'll have big bills that impact the entire state, and I think we should take some field trips. I think
Already started coordinating with the House.
yes. So I think we need to get back out in the communities. Whenever someone tells me a new wrinkle in like, well, you wrote this housing bill for this situation, but we have this situation, it's really valuable for us to have those scenarios in mind. And so I hope we go on some field
So
trips.
to that end, Mark and I talked about beginning in a very rural
Right.
community
Yeah,
and then a slightly less
Yeah.
rural community, kind of a more mixed one, and then in a deeply urban.
great. The final thing I'll say is that people told us cost of living is breaking them and it's causing them to leave the state. And that is a scientific conversation we should be having in this committee. We have basic needs budget on the agenda, but I would ask that we also look at the Economic Policy Institute's cost of living calculator for the country. You can plug in the number of adults and children in your household and see the average cost of living in your county. And I encourage people to do that because Vermont, every county's cost of living is higher than most metropolitan areas in the country. It's about $135,000 to be able to pay your bills on time and maybe go out to eat once in a while and maybe go on a vacation. That is what Vermonters are telling us, and nobody makes $135,000. A majority of the folks in our counties. So when we talk about basic needs budget, I also want us to get into the science of family budgets and cost of living, and look at what all goes into that for people to pay their bills, and maybe bring in some experts from around the country because Vermont has a scientific cost of living problem that goes beyond our kind of nice to have policy thing, thought pools that we don't want to do anything with.
I would tag on to that. We also have there are two sides to that, to cost and to affordability. What things cost and what people earn. And you've touched on what is my pet concern here is that we build what people earn.
Mhm.
So people are systemically across Vermont, and we're going to hear from Matt Barowitz and several others. Vermonters by sector are underpaid. And I think that's a key piece. No one wants to talk about that, but that is a big piece of what we also need to be addressing. Not just what things cost, but what are people earning? Because one of the reasons they can't afford it is they're not earning it. So I think that's is there another high level one that you have before we have 2 minutes?
I would just throw out like a lot of my things that aren't under housing. I put under community wealth building. It's a model in European countries like Ireland where they have a kind of commissioner or secretary of community wealth building, and it captures a lot of questions about how much people are paid and how much investment exists in their community, what their infrastructure is to be successful, where the rungs of the ladder are for them to climb. So I have put a lot of the other issues I care about under the larger umbrella of community wealth building. And I asked our dear friend, Representative Connor Casey, to see if he could get the, some members of Irish government to talk to us about.
Ooh, testimony from Ireland. I think that's great.
Yes, community wealth building. I heard some of that conversation at President Obama's Democracy Forum.
Oh, which is great. So I think at this point, we will break for our lunch and I would encourage people to go up and listen to the mayor's press conference on Let's Build Homes, which is happening at 12 noon in the Cedar Creek Room. And what? Let's Build Homes. That's what we're.
We don't even have to worry about which mayor, honestly. It's a collective effort.
I think it's a collective effort, and Moreau Weinberger is the one who called me about it, but I know there are lots of other people that are part of this effort. So with that, we will see if